If you've been avoiding bread, rice, and potatoes because your doctor or someone on the internet told you they'd wreck your blood sugar, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because what I'm about to share with you is something most people over 60 never hear in a routine checkup. Not because doctors are hiding it, but because a standard appointment simply doesn't leave enough time to explain it properly. Here's the truth. It's not the bread, the rice, or the potato that's the problem. It's how you're eating them. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you, with actual science, how to enjoy these foods again, without sending your blood sugar on a roller coaster. No extreme diets, no gimmicks, no buying anything special. Just 3 practical strategies you can start using at your very next meal. So if you're ready, let's get into it. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim, and welcome to Senior Health Review, where we break down complex medical science into straightforward, usable information for adults over 60. I've spent years working with older patients, and one of the most common things I hear is, "I miss being able to eat normally. Every meal feels like a gamble." If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and more importantly, you don't have to feel that way. Today, we're tackling one of the most misunderstood topics in senior health: carbohydrates and blood sugar. We're going to cover the glycemic index, something called resistant starch, a surprisingly powerful technique called meal sequencing, and a few smart swaps that make a real difference. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time. We publish new videos every week, all focused on health topics that matter for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. All right, let's start with the science, and I promise to keep it simple. To understand why blood sugar spikes happen, I want you to picture a key and a lock. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, potatoes, pasta, your body breaks them down into glucose, which enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas then releases insulin. Think of insulin as the key that unlocks your cells, allowing glucose to get inside and be used for energy. Now, when we're younger, those locks work beautifully. The key fits, the door opens, glucose gets in quickly, and blood sugar returns to normal. But here's what changes as we get older. After about age 60, many people develop what's called insulin resistance. The locks get rusty. The key still exists, your pancreas is still making insulin, but the cells don't respond as efficiently. Glucose stays in the bloodstream longer, blood sugar stays elevated longer, and over time, that takes a real toll on your heart, kidneys, eyes, and nerves. Now, not everyone over 60 has full-blown type 2 diabetes, but research consistently shows that insulin sensitivity declines with age, even in people who eat well and stay active. It's partly biological, and it means the same bowl of rice that felt perfectly fine at 45 can cause a significant spike at 65. Now let's talk about the specific foods that tend to cause the biggest problems. You've probably heard of the glycemic index, or GI. It's a scale from 0 to 100 that measures how quickly a food raises blood sugar. The higher the number, the faster the spike. Here's where our 3 main foods land. White bread, GI of around 75. Your blood sugar can spike within 30 minutes of eating it. White rice, GI of around 72. Especially problematic when eaten alone, without fiber or protein. Boiled white potatoes, GI of around 78. One of the highest of any common food. Now, I want to make something very clear. These numbers are not destiny. They are starting points. And there's a related concept called glycemic load, or GL, that's actually more useful in real life, because it accounts for how much of a food you actually eat. A food can have a high GI, but a low glycemic load if you eat a small portion. And, this is the key point, the way you prepare food and what you eat with it can dramatically change how your body responds. That's exactly what we're going to explore for the rest of this video. The problem isn't the bread or the rice or the potato. The problem is eating them in ways that drive your blood sugar up quickly without any of the buffers that slow that process down. Let me show you how to change that. This next section is the one that genuinely surprises most of my patients. So I want you to pay close attention because this is a game changer. Here's a question. Is a bowl of freshly cooked rice the same as a bowl of refrigerated leftover rice reheated the next day? Most people would say yes, it's the same rice, same ingredients, same portion size. But metabolically speaking, they are not the same food. Here's why. When you cook starchy foods, rice, potatoes, bread, pasta, and then let them cool down, something remarkable happens at the molecular level. The starch molecules restructure themselves into a form that your small intestine cannot digest as easily. This is called resistant starch. And resistant starch is a very good thing. Because it doesn't get broken down and absorbed as glucose in your small intestine, it doesn't cause a rapid blood sugar spike. Instead, it passes into your large intestine where it acts more like a dietary fiber, feeding your gut bacteria and supporting digestive health. Multiple research studies have confirmed this. One study found that cooling cooked rice overnight can reduce its glycemic response by nearly 50% compared to freshly cooked rice. That's not a small difference. That's enormous. And here's what makes this even better. Reheating the food does not undo the effect. Once the resistant starch has formed during cooling, most of it stays intact even when you warm it back up. So you're not eating cold food for the rest of your life. You're simply changing the preparation order. Let me walk you through exactly how to apply this to each of our three foods. Bread. Instead of buying a fresh loaf and eating it the same day, try sourdough bread. We'll talk more about why sourdough is special in a moment, and store it in the freezer. When you want a slice, toast it straight from frozen. The freeze and toast process increases resistant starch content and slows down how quickly the carbohydrates are absorbed. Rice. Cook your rice the evening before. Let it cool completely, then refrigerate it overnight. The next day, reheat it and eat it as normal. That one simple step, cooking the night before, significantly reduces the blood sugar impact of the exact same rice. Potatoes. Skip the hot baked potato. Instead, boil your potatoes, let them cool completely, and serve them cold. Or make a classic potato salad. Cold boiled potatoes have dramatically lower glycemic impact than hot ones. If you prefer them warm, reheat them gently after cooling. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Dr. Kim, I don't always have time to plan ahead. Here's my practical suggestion for anyone over 60 who wants to make this work without overthinking it. Pick one afternoon per week, Sunday works well for many people, and batch cook your carbs. Make a big pot of rice, boil a tray of potatoes, and refrigerate everything. You've now got 4 or 5 days of blood sugar-friendly carbs ready to go with almost no daily effort. It's one of the simplest and most effective nutrition strategies I know for people managing their blood sugar. All right, let's talk about something that requires no cooking, no meal prep, and absolutely zero extra cost. Just a small change in the order in which you eat. Researchers at Weill Cornell Medicine conducted a landmark study looking at exactly this question. Does it matter what order you eat the components of your meal? The answer was a resounding yes. The study found that eating vegetables and protein before carbohydrates reduced post-meal glucose spikes by up to 73% compared to eating in the reverse order. 73%. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a transformation. So what is the ideal sequence? Step 1. Start with vegetables. Load up on non-starchy vegetables first. Salad, steamed broccoli, spinach, green beans, cooked zucchini, whatever you enjoy. The fiber in vegetables forms a kind of physical barrier in your stomach and slows down how quickly everything else gets digested and absorbed. Step 2. Eat your protein and healthy fats. Chicken, fish, eggs, lean beef, olive oil, avocado. These foods also slow gastric emptying, meaning food moves more slowly from your stomach into your intestines, which flattens the blood sugar curve. Step 3. Finish with the carbohydrates. Only after you've eaten your vegetables and protein should you eat your bread, rice, or potatoes. At this point, there's already a buffer in your digestive system that dramatically reduces how quickly the carbs are absorbed. It sounds almost too simple, right? But the science is very consistent on this point. The physical sequence of digestion matters. Your gut processes food in layers. What you eat first has a downstream effect on everything that follows. Now let me show you what this looks like in a real meal. Breakfast. Start with a couple of scrambled eggs and a handful of spinach sautéed in olive oil. Then, after you've eaten those, have your one slice of sourdough toast. Not before the eggs, after. Lunch. Begin with a side salad, even a small one. Then eat your grilled chicken or tuna. Then, as a side, have a half cup of reheated rice. Dinner. Open with a bowl of soup or a plate of roasted vegetables. Then move to your baked salmon or turkey. Finish with a small portion of reheated potato, cooled and rewarmed as we discussed. I want to be honest with you. Changing the order you eat takes some mental adjustment, especially if you've been eating a certain way for 60 years. But most of my patients find that within a week or two, it becomes completely natural. And when they start noticing that their energy levels are more stable after meals, that they're not crashing or feeling foggy the way they used to, the habit sticks. Now let's talk about some smart swaps, because not all bread, rice, and potatoes are created equal. And I want to make sure you know your options, because some of these choices make a significant difference without requiring you to give up anything you love. Let's start with bread. The single best swap you can make is replacing regular white bread with sourdough. Here's why. Sourdough is made through a natural fermentation process. The lactic acid produced during fermentation actually lowers the glycemic index of the bread. Studies show sourdough can have a GI of around 50 to 55 compared to 75 for regular white bread. That's a meaningful difference. If you want to go even further, look for 100% whole grain bread. And I want to emphasize, read the label carefully. Whole wheat doesn't always mean what you think it does. Look for 100% whole grain as the first ingredient. Even better, try Ezekiel bread made from sprouted grains. It's widely available in American grocery stores, usually in the freezer section, and has one of the lowest glycemic impacts of any bread on the market. Now, rice. Not all white rice is the same. Basmati rice, which is common in Indian and Middle Eastern cooking and widely available in the US, has a glycemic index of around 50 to 58, significantly lower than standard long-grain white rice. It's a simple swap that makes a real difference. Another option I love is a 50-50 mix, half basmati rice and half cauliflower rice. You cut the carbohydrate content nearly in half, but the texture is very similar to all rice, and most people genuinely can't tell the difference once it's mixed into a dish. And of course, remember our cook, cool, reheat trick from earlier. Use that with your basmati and you've compounded your benefit. What about potatoes? When you must eat potatoes hot, And I understand, sometimes you just want a warm baked potato. Sweet potatoes are your friend. They have a glycemic index of roughly 44 to 63 compared to 78 for boiled white potatoes. They're also rich in fiber, vitamin A, and potassium, which is especially beneficial for heart health in older adults. When you do eat white potatoes, add a source of fat, a small pat of butter, a drizzle of olive oil, or a dollop of plain Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. Fat slows the absorption of carbohydrates. It's another buffer. Now, let's talk portion size without making you feel like you're being punished. Here's the simplest rule I know. Your carb portion should be roughly the size of your closed fist. Not a heaping mound, not a side plate, one fist-sized portion. That's it. You don't need a food scale, you don't need an app, just your own hand. And finally, I want to mention one small habit that has some genuinely interesting research behind it. Apple cider vinegar. 1 tablespoon diluted in a large glass of water, taken about 10 minutes before a carb-heavy meal, has been shown in several studies to reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes by anywhere from 20 to 34%. The acetic acid in the vinegar slows the enzymes that break down starch. It's not a cure, it's not magic, but it's a simple, cheap, and evidence-supported tool you can add to your routine. I saved one of my favorite strategies for last because it requires no cooking, no planning, and no money whatsoever. All you need is a pair of shoes. Here's something that genuinely surprised me when I first read the research on this. A 10 to 15 minute walk after a meal is more effective at reducing blood sugar spikes than a 45-minute walk before a meal. Let me say that again because it bears repeating. A short walk after you eat does more for your blood sugar than a longer walk before you eat. Why? Because when your muscles are working, even lightly, even at a gentle stroll, they absorb glucose directly from your bloodstream. And they can do this without needing insulin as the middleman. Remember those rusty locks we talked about? Walking essentially bypasses them. Your muscles just open a different door and take the glucose in directly. The timing matters. The blood sugar spike from a meal happens within 30 to 90 minutes of eating. If you're walking during that window, you're actively mopping up that excess glucose before it can cause damage. And I want to be very clear about what this walk needs to look like. I am not talking about a brisk workout. I am not talking about jogging or power walking or anything that strains your joints. A gentle, comfortable stroll around your neighborhood, even just around the block, is enough to make a measurable difference. Walk to the mailbox. Walk around your garden. Walk to a neighbor's house and back. Bring your dog. Bring your spouse. Bring your grandchild. Whatever gets you moving for 10 minutes after you eat. Now, let me bring everything together. We've covered 3 major strategies today. Strategy 1, the resistant starch method. Cook your carbs the day before. Let them cool in the refrigerator overnight. Reheat and eat the next day. This single change can reduce the blood sugar impact of rice, potatoes, and pasta by up to 50%. Strategy 2, meal sequencing. Always eat in this order. Vegetables first, then protein and fat, then carbohydrates. This can reduce post-meal glucose spikes by up to 73%. Strategy 3, the post-meal walk. Take a gentle 10 to 15 minute walk within 30 to 60 minutes of finishing your meal. This uses your muscles to absorb glucose directly, bypassing the insulin resistance that makes blood sugar control harder after 60. I call this the triple protection plan. Use all 3 together and you are stacking the odds very significantly in your favor. Before I wrap up, I want to say something directly. I know that managing blood sugar after 60 can feel exhausting. Every meal feels like a decision. Every food feels like a potential threat. And that kind of constant vigilance is genuinely stressful. But I hope what you've seen today is that you don't have to give up the foods you love. You don't have to eat cardboard. You don't have to count every gram of carbohydrate at every meal. You just need to be a little smarter about how you eat them. Cool your rice overnight. Start dinner with your salad. Take a walk around the block after lunch. These are not sacrifices. They are habits. And habits, once they're set, take almost no effort at all. Your blood sugar and your enjoyment of food can coexist. I see it in my patients all the time. Now, before you go, a quick but important note. This video is for educational purposes only. Everything I've shared is grounded in peer-reviewed research, but it is not a substitute for working with your own doctor. If you have type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, or you're on medications that affect your blood sugar, please talk to your physician before making significant changes to your diet. Some of these strategies may affect how your medications work, and your doctor needs to know what you're doing. If this video was helpful to you, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. And I have a question for you in the comments below. Which of the 3 strategies, resistant starch, meal sequencing, or the post-meal walk, are you going to try first? Let me know. I read every comment, and your feedback genuinely shapes what we cover next. Coming up next week, we're going to talk about the 5 breakfast mistakes that spike your blood sugar before 9 a.m., including one that almost everyone over 60 is making without realizing it. You will not want to miss that one. Until then, take care of yourself. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim, and this is Senior Health Review.